the big issue or the big point for many people is that there are teams in the tournament this year that don't deserve to be there. What's your thoughts on it?
You know what? I don't know. I think they did a pretty good job. I think, I guess there's a couple teams that maybe have a gripe, but I mean, you see a team like Kentucky loses in the first round of the NIT to Robert Morris. So
right.
that kind of tells you what you need to know there. I mean, I actually think that the committee did a good job. I think for the most part, everybody that's supposed to be in there, got a bid. And I think more than any other year, it's just so up in the air. I mean, there's so much parity in college basketball right now.
Yeah.
I didn't even bother filling out a bracket. I mean, one, because I'm just, I'm swamped with recruiting season and everything. But frankly, I mean, it's very difficult. Everybody loves Louisville now.
Yeah.
All of the experts and the pundits. But you know what? They weren't saying that before Louisville won the Big East tournament.
Right.
So I don't know. There's some teams that are stronger than others, but all in all, I think they did a pretty good job, and I'm excited to watch it and see how it plays out.
Okay. Do you think the system that's used currently works?
I do. I mean, I think, look, there's always going to be a few teams that think they belong, that don't get in, and there's always going to be a few teams from some of the lower conferences that have great seasons, but then they get upset in their conference tourney and they don't make it. But going in that, unless you're from the Big East or the Big Ten or the ACC or SEC, if you're trying to get in, you better win your conference tournament.
Yeah.
And the other thing you have to do is you have to schedule good competition out of your league.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the one thing that the committee definitely recognizes and rewards programs for is scheduling big non-conference games and going on the road. And even if you lose those games,
yeah,
they tend to reward those programs. So,
right.
I think the system's okay. I mean, I think, obviously they added the first four, so there's been games the last couple nights, and those teams that are kind of bubble teams got to play their way in.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be 2 or 3 or 4 teams that think they belong that don't get in. It's always going to be like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk of the parity in the game, and there's something that you mentioned. Do you think that right now is to the advantage of college basketball?
I do. I mean, look, you always want a couple of, people want to cheer against the, like a big powerhouse program. And, I remember coming up, the UNLVs and, maybe a couple of years, Duke had some great teams and North Carolina. And that's fun to see if somebody can knock them off. But I think that this year it's really so wide open.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a handful of teams, and we can talk about that. But I just think there's absolutely no clear-cut favorite, and there's really no clear-cut single player.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it in years past, you kind of knew who the number one overall pick was going to be. And maybe it would have been the kid from Kentucky this year, the center, Nerlens Noel, and he's not in there, unfortunately. But there really isn't one clear-cut team and one clear-cut player. And so I think it's going to be a few weeks of really fun basketball, and I think coaching is going to come into play significantly because
right.
Especially in college basketball, when all things are equal, you can see one team getting severely outcoached by another.
Yeah. Most definitely.
And so when I look at some of the teams that I think are going to do well in that situation, I kind of look at the coaching, and that gives me an indication of who I think is going to be successful.
Right. Do you think there's a couple of teams who are going to manage to sneak up and pull out some victories on some of the bigger programs?
There always is, right? I mean, the trick is finding out, who they are. But yeah, I mean, there definitely will be upsets. I mean, last year you almost had your first, I believe it was UNC Asheville and Syracuse. Syracuse was a 1 and Asheville was a 16, and they almost got them. Asheville got a couple bad calls down the stretch. Otherwise, they could have had them. But it's getting closer and closer, and I know there's been some 15s that have upset, number 2s. So there's no question it's going to happen. It's just going to be who is it going to be, and I don't know. I could see, a couple of lower teams knocking off somebody early, but I do think it's going to be the big schools. I mean, I think, Michigan, Indiana, Miami, Louisville obviously is hot at the right time.
Yeah.
So I still think when it's all said and done, you're going to have the Final Four be represented by teams that are probably in the top 4 seeds in each bracket.